Mitzi and Milda were talking about their grandchildren after the holidays. Mitzi said, "My daughter-in-law stopped making my grandchildren send their thank you notes. Each year, I sent the grandchildren a card with a generous check inside. I always received a lovely thank you note. However, since my daughter-in-law stopped making the grandkids send thank you notes, I never hear from them." Milda said, "My daughter-in-law never made the grandchildren send thank you notes. I, too, send them a very generous check. However, for the past several years, I hear from them within a week after they receive it. In fact, they each pay me a personal visit." "Wow," remarked Mitzi. "I wish mine would do that." "You can, Mitzi, you can." "How?" Mitzi asked. "Simple," Milda replied. "Do what I do. Don't sign the check." On the first day of parapsychology class, the professor decided to kick things off with a survey. "How many of you believe in ghosts?" the professor asked. All of the students raised their hands. "And how many of you have ever seen a ghost?" About 90% of the students raised their hands. "How many of you have ever touched a ghost?" Roughly 20% of the students raised their hands. The professor smiled and asked, "And how many of you have ever had love with a ghost?" The class went silent, but then one student in the back hesitantly raised his hand. The professor was stunned. "Really? In all my years of teaching, no one has ever answered yes to that question. Please stand up and tell the class what it was like to have love with a ghost." The student stood looking embarrassed. "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I thought you said a goat." Little Johnny brought home his history test result. It was 90. His father was so happy with it. However, his mother, Karen, just couldn't believe her son got 90 in history. After taking a closer look at the marks, she found that the handwriting style of the 9 and the 0 are different. "Johnny, you are so busted. Tell me, did you add the 0 to your marks?" "No, Mum, I didn't." "I am asking you once more. Did you add that 0 to your marks?" "Mum, no, I didn't add that 0. "Okay, as you're not telling the truth, you are grounded for 1 month." "Mum, no, please. No, I really didn't add that 0. This is your last chance, kid. Tell me the truth." "I just added the 9 to it." A couple sees a man sobbing on his knees at a cemetery. The man is yelling out, "Why did you have to die? I cannot live like this." The couple come over to console him and notice the tombstone is of someone of similar age as the distraught man. "Sir, who was this?" asks the woman. "Was it your brother? Your friend?" The man looks up at them. "My wife used to be married to him until he passed away." Continues crying out, "Please come back. I cannot take her any longer." When Pat and Mike met each other on the street one day, Pat noticed that Mike had a terrible cold. "Have you seen a doctor about that cold?" he asked. "No," said Mike, "but I probably should. Do you know a good doctor?" Pat gave him the name of his own doctor and assured him that he'd be in good hands. About a week later, they met again, and Pat wasn't sure if the cold was really better. "Did you see my doctor?" Pat inquired. "Oh yeah," Mike replied. "He was a really nice guy." "Well, did he give you something to help your cold?" "Sure did," Mike answered somewhat enthusiastically. "He told me to drink a big glass of fresh orange juice after a hot bath." "Well, did it help?" Pat asked hesitantly. "How do I know?" Mike retorted. "I haven't even finished drinking the bath yet." A group of police officers are sitting outside a woman's house after she murdered her husband. One calls dispatch and says, "We got a woman armed with a knife in here and she just killed her husband." Dispatch says, "Do you know why she killed her husband?" The officer replies, "Yeah. She told him not to step on the floor right after she mopped, and he stepped on it anyway." Dispatch asks, "Well, do you have her in custody yet?" "No, not yet." The officer says. Dispatch says, "Why not?" The officer hesitates for a moment, then finally replies, "Well, the floor still looks wet." A husband and wife are at a store shopping for new glasses for the kitchen. The wife picks up a set of small glasses and says, "I think these smaller ones are perfect." The husband shakes his head. "No way. Let's get the larger ones. They're just easier to use." The wife insists, "But smaller glasses are trendy right now. We should stick with these." Before the debate could heat up, the store clerk jumps in, trying to help. "Sir, your wife is absolutely right. Small glasses are what everyone's buying these days. Bigger ones are so outdated." The husband glares at the clerk and says, "Listen, buddy, if you don't know the whole situation, stay out of it. My hands don't fit into those tiny glasses. How am I supposed to wash them?" A customer was bothering the waiter in a restaurant. First, he asked that the air conditioning be turned up because he was too hot. Then he asked it be turned down because he was too cold, and so on for about half an hour. Surprisingly, the waiter was very patient. He walked back and forth and never once got angry. So finally, a second customer asked him why he didn't throw out the pest. "Oh, I really don't care or mind," said the waiter with a smile. "We don't even have an air conditioner." Three girls go into the doctor's office. The first takes off her shirt, and the doctor notices that she has a blue Y on her chest. He asks, "How did you get that?" She answers, "Well, my boyfriend goes to Yale, and he leaves his Yale sweatshirt on even when we make love." The next girl comes in and has a red H on her chest. She explains, "Well, my boyfriend goes to Harvard, and he leaves his sweatshirt on even when we make love." The final girl comes in and has a W on her chest. The doctor asks, "Let me guess, you have a boyfriend that goes to Wisconsin?" She answers, "No, a girlfriend at Michigan." "Why?" Two robins were sitting in a tree. "I'm really hungry," said the first one. "Me too," said the second. "Let's fly down and find some lunch." They flew to the ground and found a nice plot of plowed ground full of worms. They ate and ate and ate until they could eat no more. "I'm so full I don't think I can fly back up to the tree," said the first one. "Me neither." "Let's just lay here and bask in the warm sun," said the second. They plopped down, basking in the sun. No sooner than they had fallen asleep when a big fat tomcat snuck up and gobbled them up. As the cat sat washing his face after his meal, he thought, "I just love Baskin Robbins." An elder couple were sitting in their broken-down car on the side of the road, waiting for a tow truck. The tow truck arrives, and the driver walks up to the car as the old man who was driving rolls down his window. Driver: "Hello, folks. What seems to be the problem?" Elder lady: "What?" Elder man: "Sorry, my wife is hard of hearing." Then he looks at his wife and yells out, "He asked what the problem was." Elder lady: "I think we ran out of gas." Driver: "No problem. I can tow you to the nearest gas station. It's only about 5 miles away." Elder lady: "What?" Elder man: "He said he will tow us to the nearest gas station." Elder lady: "Okay, thank you." As the driver was hooking up the car to the tow truck, he decided to make conversation. Driver: "So where are you folks from?" Elder lady: "What?" Elder man: "He asked where we're from." Elder lady: "Birmingham, Alabama." Driver: "Birmingham. I lived there many, many years ago. Met a woman who was probably the worst of my life." Elder lady: "What?" Elder man: "He said he thinks he knows you." As her husband stepped out the front door, the wife called after him, "I bet you don't know what day this is." He paused, momentarily perplexed, but quickly plastered on a confident smile. "Of course I do, my dear. How could I forget?" he replied smoothly, before hurrying off to catch his bus to work. At 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. When the wife answered, she was greeted by a delivery man holding a box of a dozen long-stemmed red roses. By 1 p.m., another delivery arrived, a foil-wrapped 2-pound box of her favorite chocolates. Later that afternoon, a boutique courier delivered a stunning designer dress. The wife, delighted and surprised by the thoughtful gifts, could hardly wait for her husband to come home. When he finally stepped through the door, he was wearing a smug grin, proud of his quick thinking and relieved to have averted what could have been a disaster. His wife greeted him with excitement. "First the flowers, then the chocolates, and then the dress," she exclaimed. "I have never had a more wonderful Groundhog Day in my life." An Irish priest was transferred to Texas. Father Omali rose from his bed one morning. It was a fine spring day in his new West Texas mission parish. He walked to the window of his bedroom to get a deep breath of the beautiful day outside. He then noticed there was a jackass lying dead in the middle of his front lawn. He promptly called the local police station. The conversation went like this: "Good morning, this is Sergeant Jones. How might I help you?" "And the best of the day to yourself. This is Father Omali at St. Anne's Catholic Church. There's a jackass lying dead in me front lawn, and would you be so kind as to send a couple o' your lads to take care of the matter?" Sergeant Jones, considering himself to be quite a wit and recognizing the foreign accent, thought he would have a little fun with the good father, replied, "Well now, Father, it was always my impression that you people took care of the last rites." There was dead silence on the line for a long moment. Father Omali then replied, "Aye, 'tis certainly true, but we are also obliged to notify the next of kin first, which is the reason for me call." One evening, a man and his wife are discussing what they think their son will be when he grows up. "I have an idea," says the father. With that, he puts a crisp $10 bill, a bottle of fine whiskey, and a Bible on the coffee table. If he takes the money, he'll be a banker. If he takes the whiskey, he'll be a drunk. And if he takes the Bible, that means he'll be a preacher. The man and his wife hide just before their son comes in the door. As they watch from where they're hiding, the boy goes over to the coffee table. First, he picks up the $10 bill, looks at it, and sets it down. Then he picks up the bottle of whiskey, uncorks it, sniffs it, and sets it down. Lastly, he picks up the Bible, leafs through it, and sets it down. Then the boy takes the money and stuffs it into his pocket, grabs the whiskey, and walks off with the Bible under his arm. "Well, how do you like that?" exclaims the father. "He's going to be a politician." This guy, Joe, goes to pick up his fiancée for a date in a brand new Porsche. His fiancée is confused because Joe isn't exactly a wealthy guy. She says, "Where did you get this Porsche?" Joe says, "It was in my garage." She says, "What was it doing in your garage?" Joe says, "Well, I guess God put it there." She says, "That's ridiculous." Joe says, "Well, yes, it is ridiculous, isn't it, Mary?" An old man lives alone on a farm in Idaho. He wants to spade his potato garden, but he is getting older, and it has become very difficult for him. His only son, Bubba, who used to help him, was in prison. So the old man wrote a letter to his son and described his predicament. "Dear Bubba, I am feeling pretty bad because it looks like I won't be able to plant my potato garden this year. I'm just getting too old to be digging up a garden plot. If you were here, all my troubles would be over. I know you would dig the lot for me." A few days later, he received a letter from his son. "Dear Dad, for heaven's sake, don't dig up that garden. That's where I buried the bodies." At 4 o'clock the next morning, FBI agents and local police showed up at the old man's farm and dug up the entire area without finding any bodies. They apologized to the old man and left. That same day, the old man received another letter from his son. "Dear Dad, you can go ahead and plant the potatoes now." A cowboy appeared before St. Peter at the pearly gates. "Have you ever done anything of particular merit?" St. Peter asked. "Well, I can think of one thing," the cowboy offered. "On a trip to the Black Hills out in South Dakota, I came upon a gang of bikers who were threatening a young woman. I directed them to leave her alone, but they wouldn't listen. So I approached the largest and most tattooed biker and smacked him in the face. Kicked his bike over, ripped out his nose ring, and threw it on the ground. I yelled, "Now, back off or I'll kick the out of all of you." St. Peter was impressed. "When did this happen?" The cowboy replied, "Couple of minutes ago." Deep in the backwoods of Letcher County, Kentucky, a redneck's wife went into labor in the middle of the night. The frantic husband called a doctor out to assist in the delivery. Since there was no electricity, the doctor handed the father-to-be a lantern and said, "Here, you hold this high so I can see what I am doing." Soon a baby boy was brought into the world. The redneck set the lantern down to take a swig of whiskey. "Whoa there," said the doctor. "Don't be in such a rush to put that lantern down. I think there's another one coming." Sure enough, within minutes, he had delivered a baby girl. "Hold that lantern up. Don't set it down. There's another one on its way," said the doctor. Within a few minutes, he had delivered a third baby. "No, don't be in a hurry to put down that lantern. It seems there's yet another one coming," cried the doctor. The redneck scratched his head in bewilderment and asked the doctor, "You reckon it might be the light that's attracting him?" A man in his mid-40s bought a new BMW and was out on the interstate for a nice evening drive. The top was down. The breeze was blowing through what was left of his hair, and he decided to see what the engine had. As the needle jumped up to 80 upper, he suddenly saw flashing red and blue lights behind him. "There's no way they can catch a BMW," he thought to himself and opened her up further. The needle hit 90, then 100, and finally reality hit him, and he knew he shouldn't run from the police, so he slowed down and pulled over. The cop came up to him, took his license without a word, and examined it and the car. "It's been a long day. This is the end of my shift, and it's Friday the 13th. I don't feel like more paperwork, so if you can give me an excuse for your driving that I haven't heard before, you can go." The guy thinks for a second and says, "Last week my wife ran off with a cop. I was afraid you were trying to give her back." "Have a nice weekend," said the officer, and he walked away. A young man is walking through a supermarket when he notices an old lady following him around. Thinking nothing of it, he ignores her and continues shopping. As he gets to the checkout line, she moves in front of him. "Pardon me," she says. "I'm sorry if my staring at you has made you feel uncomfortable. It's just that you look just like my son who died recently." "I'm very sorry," replies the young man. "Is there anything I can do for you?" "Yes," she says. "As I'm leaving, can you say, 'Goodbye, Mother'? It would make me feel much better." "Sure," answers the young man. As the old woman is leaving, he calls out, "Goodbye, Mother." When he steps up to the checkout counter, he sees that his total is 625,000 USD. "How can that be?" he asks. "I only purchased a few things." The clerk replies, "Your mother said you would pay for her." Johnny and his girlfriend are sitting together. Johnny, with a mischievous smile, says, "All right, put it inside." She looks a bit uncertain and replies, "I don't think I can do this." He chuckles. Use both hands to hold it and give it a good squeeze. She tries it and says, "Wow, this method works so well." Just then, their teacher, Mrs. Thompson, walks by, noticing what they're doing. She looks at them, clearly confused, and yells, "What exactly are you two doing?" Johnny smiles and says, "It's just a mango, Mrs. Thompson, the traditional way of eating it." A mother visits her son for dinner, who has a girl as a roommate. During the meal, his mother can't help but notice how pretty his roommate is. She has long been suspicious of a relationship between the two, and this has only made her more curious. Over the course of the evening, while watching the two interact, she starts to wonder if there's more between her son and his roommate. Reading his mom's thoughts, her son volunteers, "I know what you must be thinking, but I assure you, We are just roommates. About a week later, his roommate comes to him and says, "Ever since your mother came over for dinner, I've been unable to find the silver serving tray." "You don't suppose your mother took it, do you?" He replies, "Well, I doubt it, but I'll email her just to be sure." He sits down and writes, "Dear Mom, after visiting me, I found that my silver serving tray is missing. I'm not saying that you took it, and I'm not saying that you didn't take it. But the fact remains that it has been missing ever since you were over for dinner. Love, your son." Several days later, he receives an email from his mother which reads, "Dear son, I'm not saying that you sleep with your roommate, and I'm not saying that you don't sleep with her. But the fact remains that if she was sleeping in her own bed, she would have found the silver serving tray by now. Under her pillow." Two little boys walk into a store. One is 9, one is 4. The 9-year-old grabs a box of tampons from the shelf and carries it to the register for checkout. The cashier asks, "Oh, these must be for your mom." The 9-year-old replies, "Nope, not for my mom." Without thinking, the cashier responded, "Well, they must be for your sister then." The 9-year-old replies, "Nope, not for my sister either." The cashier had now become curious. "Oh, not for your mom and not for your sister. Then who are they for?" The 9-year-old replied, "They're for my 4-year-old little brother." The cashier is surprised. "Your 4-year-old brother?" The 9-year-old explains, "Well, yeah, they say on TV if you wear one of these, you can swim or ride a bike. And my little brother can't do either of those things." A girl came skipping home from school one day. "Mommy, Mommy!" she yelled. "We were counting today, and all the other kids could only count to 4, but I counted to 10. See? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. "Very good," said her mother. "Is it because I'm blonde, Mommy?" "Yes, it's because you're blonde," her mother replied. The next day, the girl came skipping home from school. "Mommy, Mommy!" she yelled. "We were saying the alphabet today, and all the other kids could only say it to D, but I said it to G. See? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. "Very good," said her mother. "Is it because I'm blonde, Mommy?" "Yes, Pumpkin, it's because you're blonde." The next day, the girl came skipping home from school. "Mommy, Mommy!" she yelled. "We were in gym class today, and when we showered, all the other girls had flat chests. But I have these." Then she lifted her tank top to reveal a pair of 36Cs. "Very good," said her embarrassed mother. "Is it because I'm blonde, Mommy?" "No. It's because you're 25. A man and his wife are pulled over by a police officer. The officer walks up to the man's window and says, "Sir, you were going 60 in a 45. The man says, "I was only going 55. His wife hits him in the arm and says, "No, you were going 65. He gives her a very dirty look. The officer continues, "I'm also going to have to give you a ticket for a broken tail light." The man says, "Broken tail light? I had no idea." His wife hits him in the arm again and says, "What? I've been telling you to get it fixed for weeks." The man yells, "Will you be quiet?" The officer looks at his wife and asks, "Ma'am, does he always talk to you that way?" The man's wife shrugs and says, "Only when he drinks." A big city lawyer was representing the railroad in a lawsuit filed by an old rancher. The rancher's prize bull was missing from the section through which the railroad passed. The rancher was only asking to be paid the fair value of the bull. The case was scheduled to be tried before the Justice of the Peace at the courthouse located in the town square. The railroad's attorney immediately cornered the rancher and tried to get him to settle out of court. He did his best selling job, and finally the rancher agreed to take half of what he was originally asking. After the rancher had signed the release and accepted the check, the young lawyer couldn't resist gloating a little over his success. He tells the rancher, "You're really a country hick, old man. I sure put one over on you in there." You see, I couldn't have won the case. The engineer was asleep, and the fireman was in the caboose when the train went through your ranch that morning. I didn't have one witness to put on the stand. I bluffed you. The old rancher replied, Well, I'll tell you, young feller, I was a little worried about winning that case myself. 'Cause that darn bull came home this morning. A teacher told her young class to ask their parents for a family story with a moral at the end of it, and to return the next day to tell their stories. In the classroom the next day, Joe gave his example first. My dad is a farmer, and we have chickens. One day we were taking lots of eggs to the market in a basket on the front seat of the truck when we hit a big bump in the road. The basket fell off the seat and all the eggs broke. The moral of the story is not to put all your eggs in one basket. Very good, said the teacher. Next, it was Mary's turn. We are farmers too. We had 20 eggs waiting to hatch, but when they did, we only got 10 chicks. The moral of this story is not to count your chickens before they're hatched. Very good, said the teacher again, very pleased with the response so far. Next, it was little Johnny's turn to tell his story. My dad told me this story about my Aunt Karen. Aunt Karen was a flight engineer in the war, and her plane got hit. She had to bail out over enemy territory, and all she had was a bottle of whiskey, a machine gun, and a machete. Go on, said the teacher, intrigued. So little Johnny continued. Aunt Karen drank the whiskey on the way down to prepare herself. Then she landed right in the middle of 100 enemy soldiers. She dropped 70 of them with the machine gun until she ran out of bullets. Then she nailed 20 more with the machete until the blade broke. And then she dispatched the last 10 with her bare hands. Good heavens, stammered the horrified teacher. What did your father say was the moral of that frightening story? Little Johnny replied, Don't mess with Aunt Karen when she's been drinking. An older couple were going across the country by car. They stopped at a gas station, and he got out to fill the tank. The wife got out to go to the washroom, but the husband didn't see her leave the car. He paid for the gas and then drove off, leaving his wife at the gas station. When his wife came out of the washroom, she discovered that her husband had driven off. She waited for a while as she expected him to come back. But after a half hour, she went to the cashier and explained the situation. The cashier called the highway patrol, and they dispatched a car after him. The patrol car caught up with him, sounded the siren, and the man pulled off the road. The officer went to the man's car and told him that he had driven off without his wife and that she was still back at the gas station. Thank goodness, replied the man. I thought that I'd gone deaf. A blonde wanted a pair of real alligator shoes, in the worst way. But she didn't want to pay the high prices the local vendors were asking. After becoming very frustrated with the no-haggle attitude of one of the shopkeepers, the blonde shouted, Maybe I'll just go out and catch my own alligator so I can get a pair of shoes at a reasonable price. The shopkeeper said, By all means, be my guest. Maybe you'll luck out and catch yourself a big one. Determined, the blonde turned and headed for the swamps, set on catching herself an alligator. Later in the day, the shopkeeper is driving home when he spots the young woman standing waist-deep in the water, shotgun in hand. Just then, he sees a huge 9-foot alligator swimming quickly toward her. She takes aim, kills the creature, and with a great deal of effort, hauls it onto the swamp bank. Lying nearby were several more dead alligators. The shopkeeper watched in amazement. Just then, the blonde flipped the alligator on its back, and frustrated shouts out, Darn! This one isn't wearing any shoes either. A doctor comes up with a crazy idea to make more money. He puts a sign outside his clinic that reads, If I can cure you, you pay me $20. If I can't, I'll pay you $100. A lawyer sees the sign and decides it's his time to shine. He goes to the doctor and says, Doctor, I've lost my sense of taste. Please cure me. The doctor tells his nurse, Bring me some medicine from drawer 33. The lawyer takes a swig, immediately spits it out, and exclaims, "This is gasoline." The doctor smiles and says, "There you go. Taste restored. That'll be $20, please." Frustrated, the lawyer pays and leaves, but he's determined to outsmart the doctor. The next day he returns and says, "Doctor, I've lost my memory. Please cure me." The doctor nods and says to his nurse, "Bring me some medicine from drawer 33. The lawyer shouts, "Wait, that's the same stuff you gave me last time." The doctor grins. "Memory restored. That'll be $20, please." Now furious, the lawyer comes back the next day with a foolproof plan and says, "Doctor, I've gone blind. Cure me if you can." The doctor sighs and says, "Sorry, I can't cure blindness. Here's your $100. He hands the lawyer a $5 bill. The lawyer says, "Hey, this is only $5, not $100. The doctor smiles and says, "Blindness cured. That'll be $20, please." A young guy moved to California and went to a big box store looking for a job. The manager of the store asked him, "Do you have any sales experience?" The guy replied, "Yeah, I was a salesman back home." The manager liked him and gave him the job. "You can start tomorrow. I'll come down after we close and see how you did." His first day on the job was rough, but he got through it. After the store was locked up, the manager came down and asked, "How many customers bought something from you today?" The guy replies, "Just one." The boss asks, "Just one? Our salespeople average 20 to 30 customers a day." The boss continued, "How much was the sale for?" The guy replied, "Over $125,000. The boss was shocked. "Over $125,000? What the heck did you sell?" The guy answered, "First, I sold him a fish hook, then I sold him a new fishing rod. Then I asked him where he was going fishing, and he said down the coast, so I told him he was going to need a boat. So we went down to the boat department, and I sold him a twin-engine Boston whaler. Then he said he didn't think his Honda Civic would pull it, so I took him down to the automotive department and sold him that expedition." The boss was amazed. "A guy came in here to buy a fish hook, and you sold him a boat and a truck?" The guy said, "No, the guy came in here to buy tampons for his wife, and I said, 'Dude, your weekend's shot. You should go fishing.'" After 37 years of marriage, Jake left his wife, Edith, for his young secretary. His new girlfriend insisted they live in Jake and Edith's luxurious multi-million-dollar home. With better lawyers on his side, Jake prevailed in court and gave Edith just 3 days to move out. On the first day, Edith packed her belongings into boxes, crates, and suitcases. On the second day, movers came to take her things. On the third day, she sat down for a final meal at their elegant dining table. By candlelight, with soft music in the background, she enjoyed a feast of shrimp, caviar, and Chardonnay. When she finished, Edith walked into every room of the house and stuffed half-eaten shrimp shells, dipped in caviar into the hollow spaces of the curtain rods. She cleaned up the kitchen and left to the house for good. When Jake and his new girlfriend moved in, everything seemed perfect for a few days. Then, an unrelenting stench began to fill the house. They tried everything: deep cleaning, airing out the rooms, checking vents for dead animals, and even replacing the carpets. Exterminators were called in, and air fresheners were placed everywhere. Nothing worked. The smell became so unbearable that friends stopped visiting. Repair workers refused to enter, and even the housemaid quit. Desperate, they decided to sell the house. Despite cutting the price in half, no buyers showed interest. The foul odor had earned the house a notorious reputation, and even local realtors stopped taking their calls. Eventually, Jake and his girlfriend had to borrow a large sum of money to buy a new home. One day, Edith called Jake to ask how he was doing. He vented about the house's unbearable smell and their struggles to sell it. Edith listened sympathetically and mentioned how much she missed her old home. She offered to take the house back in exchange for a significant reduction in her divorce settlement. Desperate to be rid of the house, Jake agreed. He quickly sold it to her at a fraction of its original value, provided she signed the papers that same day. Edith agreed and finalized the deal within hours. A week later, Jake and his girlfriend stood watching movers pack their belongings to transfer to their new home. As they smiled, satisfied to leave the nightmare behind, the movers loaded up everything, including the curtain rods. And before you go, here's the deal. I tell jokes on YouTube, but this is no joke. For every 1,000 subscribers and likes on this video, I will find 50+ homeless people and donate $100 each to them. Hit subscribe and let's spread laughs and kindness.